What makes horror games good? Is it the unexpected jump scares, the puzzle solving gameplay, or laughingly bad voice acting?
What? What is this? Blood.
It's a hard question to answer. There's so many horror games out there these days, from the likes of popular indies such as Five Nights at Freddy's to the extremely popular AAA titles like Resident Evil. Yet, there's one game that always has been highly regarded as one of, if not the best, horror game out there. Silent Hill 2. Now, to preface this, I'm not really into horror games or even movies. I don't mind playing some of them, but a lot of the tropes in horror genre in general tend to be pretty overused. Like cheap jump scares that get more and more predictable with every new entry, or just dumb characters that make the worst fucking decisions, or just stupid parody ripoffs. However, there's a particular type of horror media I do vibe hard with, and that is the more psychological side of horror. The horror is trying to mess you up more mentally rather than physically scaring you. Those type of movies I like the most. But there's not many games that are able to pull off that genre of horror well. No other game than the Silent Hill series could come close to nailing psychological horror. This is the reason why I was really curious and interested to try out Silent Hill 2 one day. It was really damn hard to figure out where to get the game from, cause fuck Konami for not having it on Steam or any other major online game retailer. Sadly, I ended up pirating the game since I couldn't find any way to play it legally. I know I'm technically admitting to a crime on camera, however, I really tried, guys, and couldn't find anything. And if a company itself is terrible at retaining their older games and refuse to sell them and make them easily available, I guess that's really the best other option that you really have. Like, I couldn't really figure out what else to do, guys. I'm sorry. I also installed the Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition, a fan-made remaster that upscales the textures, character models, and adds a few other graphical tweaks to the original. It's low-key better than most game remasters we get nowadays, to be honest. Upon booting up Silent Hill 2 and seeing that foggy ghost town from the horizon, I knew that this game is gonna be an experience that I'll never forget. Silent Hill 2 does a really good job at hooking the player from the start by giving James, our protagonist, and us, the player, just enough information to continue playing, but not enough for us to see the whole picture.
Mary, could you really be in this town?
James's main objective throughout the game is to find his wife, who's apparently been dead for 3 years. It's more than enough to spark curiosity and engagement in the player to go on this journey. And man, it is such an unforgettable one.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill.
It's such an immersive yet haunting experience walking through this creepy abandoned ghost town surrounded by thick fog. I have to say, this game has one of the best fogs I've seen in gaming. I know lots of modern games probably have better looking fog, but none of them make use of it as good as Silent Hill 2. And I have to say, this game's graphics look way ahead of its time. It's absolutely insane. I know it would look better since I downloaded a more refined and upscaled version of the game. However, even the original game's visuals look pretty impressive for something that came out back in 2001. The fog clears as you unravel the mysteries of this deserted town. It also hides the dangerous monsters that are waiting to strike you while your radio buzzes louder as they get closer. I swear, the amount of times I've been freaked the fuck out by the weird sliding monsters hiding underneath the car is staggering. Although my main criticism with the game is that most of the monsters you encounter are pretty lackluster. There is a lack of variety there and they don't really do much. They just walk slowly towards you to attack, and by then I can easily take them out with gunshots or a piece of rod or a wooden log. Even the bosses of the game are nothing special. You just keep shooting at them until they die, I guess. They really have no gimmick or anything that makes them stand out. Like, for every boss in the game, you're supposed to run as far away as possible from them, preferably to the corner of the room, and keep shooting them. That's literally what you do for every boss in this game. It gets pretty tedious at points and feels like a chore to play through, to be honest, as there's not much of an interesting challenge to beat them. Although this might be because I was playing the game on normal difficulty, maybe the challenge might be significantly more in the higher difficulties, but my point still stands. I feel like even the Resident Evil games struggle with this, as I found most of the bosses pretty boring in those games. I mean, from the ones I played anyway, which are Resident Evil 2 and 3, the remakes obviously, since the originals are fucking ancient, and Resident Evil 7. Also, I don't like the fact that the game gives you a lot of ammo to use for the guns from the get-go. One thing I admire about the Resident Evil games, more specifically Resident Evil 2 Remake, is that it starves you of ammo. Every bullet counts, and you cannot waste it on shooting regular zombies. Same is the case with The Last of Us. This keeps the game a lot more tense and encourages resource management, which I believe is something that this game lacks. I've never felt this much mental anguish in a game than when I did when I was at the hospital section. Something about it just felt creepy and off-putting, especially after reading some of the memos and letters of patients that you stumble upon while exploring. It's also pretty sad reading these letters, as you can tell these patients were suffering from all sorts of mental disorders, and more importantly, depression. The sound design also does a tremendous job at uplifting the horror and tension. For example, when you're going down the huge flight of steps in the Silent Hill Historical Society, there's this ringing noise that grows louder and louder the more you descend. It definitely kept me on edge, and I genuinely believed that something big was coming our way. I was getting chills all over my body. But as soon as you reach the door, the ringing noise fades away. It does a brilliant job building up the tension and then subverting the player's expectations. The level design in that area is also impeccable, as the darkness ahead of the staircase really keeps a mystery alive. Another cool trick that the game uses on you is when you jump down this huge hole you find in one of the areas deep underground. When you arrive at the bottom pit, you realize that there is no door or exit out of this place. You begin to panic, searching around frantically everywhere for minutes, before we finally find a way out. The game again tries to manipulate you and really question whether you made the right decision to jump down the hole or not, which is something not a lot of games do these days. But this game did, and it really blew my mind away. Anyway, now talking about the base gameplay of Silent Hill 2, it's pretty similar to the Resident Evil games, just with less action. We are supposed to explore a set area, find some clues or items to help us in solving a big puzzle in order to progress to the next part of the game. I know it's pretty bare bones and minimal, but I feel like you can't really do much else with the survival horror genre in order to make it interesting. So for someone who much prefers a more action-packed horror experience, I'd recommend the Resident Evil games instead. Silent Hill 2 lies more towards the exploration and puzzle solving side, which is something I personally vibe with more. I actually enjoyed going through each area, finding the key item, putting the puzzle together, then progressing. You really feel a sense of accomplishment. Of course, I did get stuck sometimes, so I had to Google what to do. I know I'm such a dumbass, I shouldn't have done that, and I don't recommend anyone to do that because it really ruins the enjoyment of the game, as you're searching for all the answers on the internet instead of actually using your own common sense and logic to solve the puzzle. God, I sound like an annoying high school math teacher. Anyway, there were some cool puzzles in the game, like the clock puzzle, the puzzle in the gallows, and the music box one. I didn't really find them that challenging, maybe because I got a higher IQ than you all. Just kidding, it was much easier for me since I was playing the game at normal difficulty. I do think these puzzles would be a lot harder to solve at a higher difficulty, which I would love to try out in another playthrough. Each area in the game was a blast to explore. My personal favorite area to explore was the underground prison area, or simply the Toluca prison. It feels so disturbing exploring through these areas. One area in particular which I found the most creepy was the courtyard, purely because it felt so vast, dark and empty. There's nothing there besides a pitch black darkness and a scaffold for executions. But there was also disturbing noises in the background that really gives you the feeling that someone's watching you. I got goosebumps every time I was in that room because of its emptiness. What I found more eerie was the fact that a loud scream was followed by a loud thud noise after solving that puzzle, which signifies someone being hung. There's also very disturbing growling noises you hear in the prison cells that really makes you uneasy while passing through that room. It's more so the fear of the unknown that this area captures really well and keeps you on guard in case anyone or anything shows up. Another area that I also enjoyed, or more so was terrified to explore, was a labyrinth. Mainly because it was the image of a corridor in someone's normal house, yet it was extremely dark and I felt the most lost here. I mean, it makes sense since it is a labyrinth. What I found even creepier was the more you progressed with this level, the more supernatural and otherworldly each room and corridor started to look. Like, I was terrified of the room where we fight one of the bosses, as the holes plastered across the room with something eerie poking out of them. It was really disturbing, and definitely not good for someone who has trypophobia. I swear, don't search it up or you'll be scarred for life. I'm warning you guys. We also encounter these weird crawling monsters that are underneath you, and I swear, every time I encounter them, they freak me the fuck out. The main villain Pyramid Head also makes an appearance here and chases you down. Yet somehow I managed to get to its lair and steal its big ass sword, which I didn't really use later, but whatever, I guess. Looked cool. I don't know why we were allowed to take this weapon if using it just felt unnecessary, as in most boss fights you have to be constantly fast and on your feet. Even if it does more damage to enemies, this heavy chunk of metal just slows you down and it's just not useful, which is a shame. I really thought this could be used effectively in the last boss, but I guess not. The main criticism I have about the level design of this game are the fixed cameras. I don't get why a lot of early 2000s games use this, like God of War and also Devil May Cry, because it gets really frustrating to deal with, especially if you're fighting a tough boss and the camera angle just stays fixated at one place while the boss is behind you and you can't see him, which gives them an easy window to strike you down. It's just really annoying. Now let's talk about the story of Silent Hill 2, which in my opinion is probably the most underappreciated aspect of this game. Before I continue, I'd like to warn you, like I did in the beginning of the video, that there might be spoilers in this part of the video, so if you haven't played Silent Hill 2 yet or don't want to be spoiled about it and experience it yourself, then please feel free to click off this video. But if not, please keep watching as I desperately need more engagement as I'm broke living under my mom's basement. Please help me guys, just please. So as we know, we are playing as our main protagonist, James Sunderland, who's looking for his wife. On our journey, we meet some pretty interesting characters like Angela, Laura, the fat pizza guy, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, and Maria, who is one smoking hot babe. Anyway, each character in Silent Hill 2 is dealing with guilt and regret. This town, from what I theorize, is pretty much hell or purgatory of sorts. As you keep descending down the deep depths of it, stuff gets more and more disturbing. This town is meant to torment people as it lures people in who have killed people and shows severe shame and remorse about their actions. This is especially true in the case of our main protagonist, James, as most of this game, James is dealing with substantial guilt of killing his wife, which is revealed in a shocking twist at the end. Throughout the game, he's in denial of his past crimes. Yet he is suffering both internally and externally as the consequences of his deeds are played out right in front of him. As Maria and Laura are manifestations that are meant to torment him, and both keep calling him a terrible person.
You didn't love Mary anyway.
You couldn't care less about me, could you?
This game takes huge inspiration from the old Russian book Crime and Punishment, which I obviously didn't read, but the basic premise is about an ex-Russian student who plans to kill this old lady who is a pawnbreaker in order to steal all the money and valuables she's got stored up in her flat and get a better future for himself. He justifies the act as it helps him escape poverty, and then he can go on to live the rest of his life performing good deeds. However, this is far from true after he commits the act. The intense feeling of guilt, paranoia and disgust fill him up. You can draw parallels with him to James. I mean, of course, James isn't really a broke-ass guy, as he's got a pretty sweet ride from what we can see. But he does kill his extremely sick wife so he can live a more peaceful life and be rid of all the pain and burden that comes with being with her. He justifies the killing as mercy, as he thought his wife seemed very done with her life and wanted the suffering to end.
No. That's not true. You also said you didn't want to die. The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way. I wanted my life back.
Angela is another important character in this story, as from all the subtle hints and stuff we get from the story, we can piece together the fact that she was sexually abused by her dad and that she killed him before coming into this town. She's suffering from deep trauma about her past. That's why most of the cutscenes that we get with her are very vague and she's behaving really strangely throughout the game. What's even more uncomfortable is that I found out after beating the game that Angela is only supposed to be a teenager in the game, which completely blew my mind as she looks nothing like one. Maybe this is meant to be intentional or not, but I don't know. Her story is very tragic. From her first cutscene we can tell she's looking for her mother, who I believe she had never met, as she's probably left her at a very young age. It's very sad and depressing that she commits suicide at the end of the game, as she's unable to deal with all the trauma, guilt, shame and regret of what she has done. Her last cutscene just gets me, as she walks into the blazing flames that consume her. Unfortunately, this is the case with most of the characters that we encounter in Silent Hill 2.
It's always like this.
Eddie is another such character who was bullied a lot throughout his life, and the built up anger and frustration towards the world that treated him like shit caused him to lash out and murder a dog and also severely injure his bully. He also is in deep denial and, like James, justifies his act of killing as a form of justice, as he feels he's been wronged by these people and society at large. He also perishes because of his hatred and bitterness towards everyone. We then have Laura and Maria, who I can't really say much about since they are manifestations created by the town itself to torment James, or at least Maria is. However, I did play the sub-scenario of this game called Born from a Wish, and it definitely adds more layers and depth to Maria's character instead of just being a tool to progress James's story forward. And she definitely feels more like a person here than a desire, that she has real feelings and emotions and questions everything going around her. She even tries to kill herself instead of being the key to James's destruction. Yet some otherworldly force or power, whom I theorize to be Ernest, the guy who we meet in this scenario without ever seeing his face or body, just hearing his voice, he definitely has something to do with Maria's creation, and is pulling the strings behind James's torment. Maybe he's meant to be the literal god of this town, or the devil himself, who knows? Coming to Laura, as I said, we don't really know an awful lot about her. She was apparently really close with Mary when she was with her in the hospital, and Mary really wanted to adopt her. She's also the most innocent and pure character in the game, almost like a biblical angel in a sense, which would make sense why she was so close to Mary in her final days, as like an angel she wanted to take Mary with her to heaven. And I think the special place Mary keeps referring to is actually heaven itself, hence why the main scenario is named Silent Heaven. Another thing that I have to add is the voice acting in this game is phenomenal, so is the camera work and the cinematic cutscenes that look way ahead of their time. Another cool little detail I noticed about the game is that the in-game cutscenes tend to pause a lot in between when a character says a line of dialogue.
I think you'd better stay away. This town, there's something wrong with it. It's kind of hard to explain, but
Is it dangerous?
maybe. And it's not just the fog either.
The scene itself just seems a lot slower in general. Maybe it is to capture the strange and bizarre vibe of the game, and also meant to really illustrate that the people that you're interacting with are just not well. They're all suffering from severe mental disorders and illnesses. I don't know, maybe I'm reaching far here. I'm trying to be one of those pretentious critics trying to find meaning in anything because I can't find it in my own life. Anyway, let's talk about the ending before I give my final thoughts and conclude this pretty long video. I can go on about how interesting and layered Silent Hill 2's story is and how it doesn't get enough credit for its writing, but we'll be here for hours then. Now, Silent Hill 2 has 6 different endings, and you get one based on your actions throughout the game. Specific things done in the game would trigger a specific ending. For example, keeping your health up and not giving much attention to Maria or Mary would trigger the leave ending. I really like the idea that your actions in the game dictate how James's story ends. It's really cool and pretty insane that a game this old could pull this off. It's unclear which ending is canon, and Konami has kept its canonicity ambiguous. Canonicity? Is that a word? Oh no, it's canonicity. My bad. However, in my opinion, the ending that I got, which is called In Water, is always going to be canon in my head. In this ending, we're supposed to kill Maria. I felt really bad killing her and deeply regretted it. Maybe it's meant to mimic the same feeling James felt after killing Maria, but instead make the player feel the same emotion. Anyway, after that we get this sad confrontation scene between James and Mary. It really chokes me, and the score in the background really adds to the emotional weight of this scene. I have to say, the score in this game is fucking incredible. Akira Yamaoka really knocked it out of the park with this one. It captures melancholy, despair, emptiness, and loneliness, some of the main core themes of the game, so well. James finally makes peace with what he has done and carries Mary back to his car, which is followed by a cut to black screen and the car engine starts roaring, with James saying his last piece of dialogue in this game as he's headed for the lake, which just straight up gives me chills.
I wonder, what was I afraid of? Without you, Mary, I've got nothing. Now we can be together.
That is followed by this really well acted and performed monologue, which honestly drove me to tears. Which is insane, since I'm a pretty cold, hardcore motherfucker. I don't really cry on a lot of things. But this monologue just gets me, man. Like, I don't really want to say anything about this and just let it play, just so we can see how painfully sad this scene is. And yes, I want you guys to relive this fucking misery with me.
Restless dreams. I see that town in my Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you. Waiting for you to come to see me. But you never do. And so I wait, wrapped in my cocoon of pain and loneliness. I know I've done a terrible thing to you. Something you'll never forgive me for. I wish I could change that. But I can't. I feel so pathetic and ugly laying here, waiting for you. Every day I stare up at the cracks in the ceiling, and all I can think about is how unfair it all is. The doctor came today. He told me I could go home for a short stay. It's not that I'm getting better. It's just that this may be my last chance. I think you know what I mean. Even so, I'm glad to be coming home. I've missed you terribly. But I'm afraid, James. I'm afraid you don't really want me to come home. Whenever you come see me, I can tell how hard it is on you. I don't know if you hate me or pity me, or maybe I just disgust you. I'm sorry about that. When I first learned that I was going to die, I just didn't want to accept it. I was so angry all the time, and I struck out at everyone I loved most. Especially you, James. That's why I understand if you do hate me. But I want you to know this, James. I'll always love you. Even though our life together had to end like this, I still wouldn't trade it for the world. We had some wonderful years together. Well, this letter has gone on too long, so I'll say goodbye. I told the nurse to give this to you after I'm gone. That means that as you read this, I'm already dead. I can't tell you to remember me, but I can't bear for you to forget me. These last few years since I became ill, I'm so sorry for what I did to you, did to us. You've given me so much, and I haven't been able to return a single thing. That's why I want you to live for yourself now. Do what's best for you, James. James, you made me happy.
This ending just fits Silent Hill 2 so well in my opinion. It's pretty sad yet at the same time very peaceful and calming. I know other people will have a different ending in mind which they believe is canon. That's the beauty of this game, as each ending has a different interpretation on how James deals with his guilt. And I know in this ending James basically commits suicide, which is definitely not the way out, but I just somehow feel that it just fits with his character so well. The best thing about these endings is that there's no right or wrong one. The game doesn't make it apparent which ending is the best possible choice. It's all open to interpretation, and video games are an art form, so different people will look at it subjectively with their own nuanced take. That's the beauty of it. I know that no game is perfect and every game has flaws, but what Silent Hill 2 does is so incredibly hard to mimic and pull off with modern games. Even the modern Sony PlayStation exclusives that are praised by the masses for seemingly having good storytelling and feel like great cinematic experiences, I don't think they'll ever be able to recapture the essence and the feel of Silent Hill 2. Even with the remake of this game coming out relatively soon, I'd still treasure the original way more in my heart. Playing through this game was an otherworldly experience for me, and I do not regret it one bit. I can see why it's held in such a high regard and still talked about to this day. Of course, it has flaws, which are mainly due to its age and how dated the gameplay mechanics are for the most part. But what it lacks in, it more than makes up for with its clever level design, its distinct art style inspired by the works of David Lynch, its brilliantly composed score, and also a very sad and tragic narrative. I believe that this game is a timeless classic. Even 22 years after its release, I still think that this game hasn't aged a day and very much deserves all the praise that it gets. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. And I know it has been a long ass time since I've made a video. What can I tell you guys? I've been really busy as of late. I'm working along with pursuing my studies at university. So it's really damn hard for me to find time to make content. But please thank Royal Virus 8013 for editing this video for me. I really appreciate it, as working on this video alone would have been a nightmare for me. I've also put a link to his Reddit and email account in case you guys need any of the future videos edited by this guy. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you very soon in the near future. Bye!